Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability BPD Live Show. For those of you who don't know me, I am your host. My name is Kevin Reynolds. I am a BPD survivor. I have been in full remission for over 7 years now. That means no symptoms, no episodes, no splits. You could say I just live a happy, normal life now. And I have the ability now to reach my potential. I have the ability now to make good memories, have good relationships, feel good about myself and the world that I'm in. Stuff that I never dreamed I'd ever have any control over whatsoever. Turns out that BPD was the culprit. It's just how it is. So if you're new here, I want to let you know that we do the show Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST, and we talk about borderline personality disorder. Each day we talk about a different topic related to the condition. So today I want to talk about attitude primarily. And bear in mind, questions are fine. I'll answer those as they come in. But in between, I'll be talking about mindset, attitude, how you perceive yourself, and how you look at the world. A foundational problem with BPD, really, because we generally do not like ourselves. We certainly don't love ourselves. And that's interesting for how hard we will fight to tell people how right we are. You know what I mean? We spend a great deal of our lives very unhappy, sometimes even hating ourselves. Because of what happened early on, we will typically lash out. We're angry at the world. And we don't even know what's happening, depending upon where you are on the ladder, that is. So part of today's show is ensuring that you walk away with the idea and the knowledge and the awareness that there is indeed a ladder here. And you are indeed responsible for climbing that ladder. If you want to get to remission, you have to recognize that remission is at the top of the ladder and that you are somewhere on the ladder. You know what I mean? You can't skip ahead and automatically get there. You do have to climb. You do have to do work. And you do have to change your mindset and your mentality and your attitude. I hate saying it this way, but to be completely frank, our attitude before remission kind of sucks. It kind of sucks, okay? And I know you don't want to admit that to yourself. I didn't want to admit it anyway. I'll say it that way. I wanted to desperately be good enough to the point where I could not ever be wrong. And I tried very, very hard to always be right. Don't get me wrong here. Anyway, but seriously, don't misunderstand me when I say that. I was putting in tremendous effort to always be the best that I could be. And that was the case before I was in remission, before I even knew what BPD was. And that is the case now. So I did have the attitude that you can always get better. You can always improve. I did have the attitude that I could do anything that I put my mind to. And I did have the attitude that I could have a great life. And I fought. And I believe that many of you are in that same boat where you also know deep down that you were meant for something great. You know deep down that things could have been better. Or you could have done better, or you deserve this and you're going to get it. I know deep down you have some of that there. We all do. And that's because we're very special people. We really are. Now, harnessing that desire, that ambition, that drive is a whole nother topic, right? Because you can feel so much inside in terms of what you were meant to do, who you were supposed to become, how great you were going to be. You can have an idea of that. Connecting to that idea, though, and maintaining that idea is a totally different story. And you're up against life every day, and why is that? It's because one of the other foundational issues with BPD is our need to please other people, to feel good about ourselves. We generally don't like ourselves so much on the surface. We're so scared. We're so fragile that our entire existence is dependent upon what other people tell us it is. Moon Babe, good morning, Moon Babe. I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I didn't either. I didn't think I'd get better either. And I hated that because I spent a lot of my life talking about how I'm going to get better. Don't worry, this will never happen again. You know, making promises that I know I can't keep. I remember one day during one episode it was a terrible, terrible episode. One of the worst I ever had. I was 22. I didn't know what BPD was. But I remember looking at my ex-wife and saying, I promise this will never happen again. And then in my head, I remember thinking to myself, why are you saying that? You're lying. You know it's going to happen again. You know it is. And I would literally lie about it at that point because I was still that scared of not making it, not being good enough, not, having to be alone. I was always painting the worst possible picture, which ties into this kind of attitude because you're spending half your time thinking about a future that hasn't happened yet, usually from a negative light, or you're spending half your time thinking about the past from a negative light, things that you did wrong, things that you're at fault for. Thank you, Manny. That's a hard way to live. Thank you, Jill. Good to see you guys this morning. As always, I'm seeing a lot of the same faces, which is great. It means you are on this mission. You are on this road. Because I literally can't think of any other reason why anybody would ever listen to me talk for an hour every morning. Thank you, Lil Wolf. But that's good. That is an attitude change. If you show up here every day, it tells me that you are sick and tired of living the way that you're living. You're tired of it. Good for you. You should be tired of it. And maybe there's another way, right? And you deserve better. I know you know that's true. Thank you again. Thank you. And for all the people that are giving gifts, the gift money goes directly. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you all. It goes directly into our advertising budget. So all it does is raise awareness and try and get more people into this live. And it does work. The things that you send end up leading to hundreds and thousands of different people viewing this live. Okay? You don't know who's out there, who's looking for help. And I remember what it was like when there was no help. It's very hard to get to the right place. It's very difficult. Even if you knew that I existed sometimes, it's very hard to do. And that's because it takes admitting things to yourself that they're very, very hard things to admit, and we can't wrap our brains around it by ourselves as easily. It took me so long to realize I had to take fault for everything that ever happened, and that's how I looked at it. It took me years later to realize that fault had nothing to do with this. Why'd I feel that way? I could have accepted the truth, extracted the lessons, and built a better life right away. I didn't have to wait years and feel the way I did. Dennis, good morning. I'm falling in love last year for the first time and was so fucked. After clinical care, they said it was BPD. Firstly, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Usually when we find out that we have BPD, it's not a pleasant experience. Good morning, AJ. Thank you. For those of you who are trying to get seen or heard, we do have two moderators in the chat. One is Sir AJ, you just saw send a gift. And the other is Sensitive Stability Coach. They are very close friends, and I adore both of them. So they can be trusted to make sure that you are seen and heard. And if somehow we miss your comment, please do click my profile, shoot me an email, and tell me your story. I'll offer you the best guidance I can. But that is part of the attitude problem, going back to that question or that comment. It is when you find out, I mean, they have to call it borderline personality disorder. It makes sense because it's a borderline personality disorder. But that's not how it comes across. It comes across as batshit crazy. Stay away. It's like when you get the diagnosis, you think they're putting a big sign on your forehead that says, stay away from me. I'm unpredictable, loose cannon, I'm crazy, and you will have an emotional roller coaster of a life if you're with me. That's why we don't want to be associated with it. And it's that type of stigma combined with the fact that everybody and their mother is telling you that you can't get better. You can't do things differently. You can't have a happy life. You're always going to have unstable relationships. There's no answer. And that's simply incorrect. If that were true, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't. And to be honest with you, it's not really a laughing matter, but when you get to the stage I'm at, the behavior that I used to exhibit was so primitive, it does make me laugh. I can't even believe that I thought that that was going to work. And the only reason I have that attitude is because I found ways that work. If I hadn't found ways that work, I'd be in the same damn place that I've always been, doing the same damn stuff that I've always done, ending up with the same damn outcomes that I always got. That is the definition of crazy. Repeating the same mistake and expecting a different outcome. You ever heard somebody say that that's the definition of insane? Well, I was insane to think that the things I was doing were going to work. And I don't even know how I didn't have the skill to take the time to analyze or even detect that there was a pattern. It was always somebody else's fault or something else's fault. And that was because I didn't want to make the things that I should be accountable my fault. And that was an attitude. I had the attitude that I was always right and I had to be right. And if I wasn't right, then this person must not like me enough to agree with me. To me, their opinion mattered so much that they couldn't even disagree with me because then I felt worthless, less than. I couldn't even let my partner have a different opinion than me. They might think something slightly different. That is an attack on my character. I mean, forget the situation we're talking about here, right? Erica says, I just became homeless after losing my job and the people I was with became unsafe for me. I am so sorry to hear that part, the homeless part, and I'm also sorry to hear the lack of support. Finding a support system when you have BPD is extremely difficult. We naturally push away the people that love us the most. We do. We push them away. Not saying that that's what happened in that scenario. But we do all also go through massive tribulations. I have been homeless before. I have been at rock bottom like you wouldn't even believe. I have been sleeping in ditches. I have had to sell roses at the side of an on-ramp before. I've done so many things to survive, and it's funny because when I'm honest about it, I was more accountable than I realized. You know what I mean? I was more accountable than I realized. And I wish that I had seen the accountability. As I always say, it's not your fault that your father is an alcoholic, but it is damn sure your responsibility to build a life that you want to live. Now, you might be in one of the worst of places. You really might. And that is the journey. That's the hero's journey. And I love a good underdog story. I love a good underdog story. Erica, if you keep showing up every morning, we do the lives Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., you will see different light. And you will see different things that you might be able to do to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future, which is what we want, right? We all want a good future. We all want a good life. We all want to know that there's hope. And there is. There's hope for every single one of us. I started doing this thinking, firstly, I started studying this selfishly because I want to understand what happened to me. Why? Why me, right? I spent a lot of my life saying, why me? Who am I? You know, where do I fit in? Who loves me? Who wants me around? I spent a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff. And I didn't understand. I didn't understand some of the most foundational levels of this. I didn't get that I was so damaged. You know, everybody always says it's childhood trauma. But I mean, I remember what it was like hearing that back then. I would brush it off like it didn't matter because I couldn't change it. And I knew that. You know, I couldn't go back in time and all of a sudden have this kind of childhood or that kind of childhood or this kind of father or that kind of father. All of that was out of my control, and my brain knows that. So I didn't even have that conscious thought. Easier to just be upset, easier to be angry, easier to point my finger at anything I can, to avoid taking some sense of accountability for what I should be doing now. Zeta, good morning, Zeta. Will my BPD partner come back after breaking up with me and blocking me? Well, without knowing the details of the case specifically, your exact situation, I am hesitant to offer more concrete advice. So please do send me your full story by email, and I'll tell you what I think, okay? And I'll also tell you what I think you could do to improve the likelihood that maybe you will hear from your ex, right? Or your partner. I think if it just happened, staying committed as though this relationship is still on, just giving you general advice from the surface, is a good idea, because I will say that most BBD people, when we're blocking you, when we're running, when we're pushing you away, we don't really want you to go. We're just hurting. We have no way to express our pain. And I hate to say that we want you to feel our pain, but we do at the time. We don't want you to feel our pain because we're evil and we want you to feel pain. We just don't want to be alone. And we know that everyone around us is trying to understand, and they can't and they don't understand. So we have to go to these extreme measures in order to try to help them understand. Let them come to you. I think they'll probably come back. That's my opinion. But if you want to email me, I'll try to give you a more personalized opinion. Glad you're back, Kevin. Where have you been? I had some personal family health related stuff that I had to deal with for a while. My parents are older and they live about an hour away from me, so it became very difficult to juggle everything at the same time. So while I was still coaching and doing what I can for, everything else in my life, I had to sacrifice somewhere, and there's a reason I'm doing this at 7 a.m. It's not because I enjoy getting up at 6:30, because I could sleep that extra hour, right? It's because my sessions start at 8:30. You know what I mean? And they go all the way up until 9 or 10 at night. And I'm working all the time. So this is the only time I can go live. But when something's in disarray and I need to siphon an hour of my life back, this is the only place that I could sacrifice sometimes. And I hate it because I love doing this. You know what I mean? I enjoy being here every morning. And it does get me out of bed easier. I've always gotten out of bed for responsibility, but being here is different than responsibility. Being here is joy. I get joy out of this. I really do. And joy is different than happiness. Joy is different than motivation or discipline. Joy is exciting. Joy is something that you really will thrive and strive when you focus on it. You know what I mean? You will strive towards it, and it gives you a reason to wake up, and it gives you a reason to live, and all these things. And I look for whatever joy I can get, because joy, like happiness and every other emotion, is fleeting. So just like an addict might chase a substance, I now choose to chase joy. And that is part of my attitude adjustment. Moon Babe says, I can't stop lashing out at my partner because I feel like they will end up leaving me. A lot of people don't realize that we also walk on eggshells before remission, right? Everybody talks about how the partner or the parent or, the friend will have to walk on eggshells around a BPD person to avoid inflaming them, right? And we don't like hearing that because we don't want to paint that image that we're unstable and, unreliable and a loose cannon and all this kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, there's something about just admitting it that makes it 50% better right away. Just admitting to yourself that this is a problem, the reason that you're in this position where you're lashing out is because of the childhood. Does your partner deserve the pain that you experienced a long time ago? Of course not. Thank you, Royal. Of course they don't deserve it. But that's not really the point, because you don't deserve it either. Nobody deserves it. And one of the hinges that is preventing you from lashing out at your partner is understanding that fact, that you too didn't deserve what happened to you. Your partner doesn't deserve it, and neither do you. And somehow, before remission, we are so hung on the fact that somebody has to be, blamed, right? That we will pass our accountability, which has nothing to do with blame, because we're accountable for fixing it. It's us. We need to fix this. It's something that we've been afflicted with, right? We'll pass that blame to our partner or any other person who's close to us, specifically to avoid having to correct the problem. And we don't want to correct the problem because that means losing control. We lose control, we lose our sense of security, our safety, we become vulnerable, which is exactly what's going on here. So you'll walk on eggshells to avoid certain topics because you're scared that the consequence is your partner will leave you. But you have to start accepting a multitude of futures, and some of those futures don't include your partner. Now, I'm not saying you can't shoot to be together. I'm not saying that you can't have a happy relationship. I'm not saying any of these things. But what I am saying is you still have to see a future without people too, because you can't control other people. They're literally out of your control. As badly as I want to be with Carolyn the rest of my life, I still see a future without her. And that's because I must protect myself. Because if she decides in 5 years that she's out of love, or she has some new passion and it's so far out that we'll never be growing together again, I can't control that. And I wouldn't want to dim her light. And as selfish as I used to be, to where I'd say, well, I want to be the first choice, I want her happiness to be the first choice, and I really mean that. I used to think I'm the only one who could make you happy, so you must stay with me, and even if you don't want to, I'm just going to convince you, manipulate you, control the situation so you do. That's not the way to go, because then eventually they leave, and then you're left with nothing, and then what, right? Wife left 3 months ago. She wants to be independent. Is this common? A common thing with BPD? Well, Melvin, is it you who has BPD or your wife? I'm guessing that you have BPD in this scenario, because there are paradigms here, and it can go both ways depending upon the scenario. But usually, it's the non-BPD person who wants to be independent, and the reason is because we have put them in that position. We have smothered them, okay? And we have siphoned their identity. Their identity becomes, how can I function around this person, right? And survive and make them happy all the time. And the answer is usually not doing a lot of the stuff that they want to do. Not pursuing their dreams in order to make sure that your comfort level's okay. And eventually they get sick of it. Even the greatest love won't stop that scenario. And it doesn't have anything to do with love, to be honest. It has to do with your comfort level. My ex-wife, I was with her for about a decade. I married her right out of high school. I was terrified I'd lose her. I didn't think I was good enough or could do better, so I married this girl, knowing in my heart that she probably isn't the right one for me. And then we had a kind of terrible relationship, but that part's irrelevant. She was following along. She didn't work because I was nervous she'd meet somebody at work. That's not why I told her not to work. I conditioned that environment in a different way, making it look like I was the hero. I'd say things like, I just want to take care of you. You shouldn't have to work. And I made it so much about me. If you get a job, it means I'm less. And that's kind of how I grew up, where the man takes care of the woman and the man works and all this, ridiculous bullshit that I thought really mattered. And it's because my dad had BPD. Who would have thought, right? My dad revealed to me close to the end of my journey, when I was starting to get better, I was talking to him about how nervous I was about something. I forget what it was. And he said, well, I understand that. I was worried about your mother touching other guys at work because she had to touch other guys. She was an x-ray technician. He was worried about that. You see what I mean? It's like you got to start putting things into perspective here and start understanding why the things are happening. Anyway, I kept my ex-wife in this torture room with me for about 10 years, and then she decided all of a sudden, this was I wasn't very spiritual at all at the time, but this was a very Christian girl, so you can paint the picture of somebody who does not do any wrong. She didn't drink alcohol, you know what I mean? All sorts of stuff, right? Now, at the end of the relationship, she wants to become a famous Instagram model, and she's doing all these, risque shoots and stuff, and weird dudes' houses, one-on-one in their weird rooms, and I'm at home shaking, freaking out, trying to keep it together and support her in this journey. And honestly, like, the stuff that she was doing, in my opinion, was wrong. I think it goes against social norm, and I think most people in my position would be very upset with that scenario. But I kept going because I was still so scared of being alone. I was scared of that nobody would ever like me. I was scared that I couldn't find anyone else. So I became a photographer for her at that point, and I learned photography, and I'd follow her around and do all of her shoots out of fear that she'd do them with somebody else, if not me. And then I figured taking all those likes that she gets from all these other dudes online was better than also having her go shoot with other dudes. You know what I mean? So I started losing myself even more, and eventually it just got worse and worse and worse, and then she still left, right? And she left telling me that I held her back and stopped her from pursuing her dreams, and I was controlling and manipulative and all this kind of stuff, and of course I didn't like any of that. So it was very hard to accept the truth, and it was easier to blame her, right? So I'd carry the condition for longer. You know what I'm saying? The awareness level has to be high enough to where you respect yourself. The awareness level has to be high enough to where you have some sense of liking yourself, of feeling that you deserve a modicum of happiness, and you deserve to be here. And it means separating yourself from other people's opinions. God, I was so worried about what everybody thought. You have to be okay with the fact that some people aren't going to like you. You have to be okay with the fact that some people might even hate you. And you have to be okay with the fact that some people won't agree with you. And the reason that it's so hard when you have an opinion and then a partner or a friend or somebody says something that you don't agree with, or they disagree with you, rather, you'll fight tooth and nail. You'll fight to the bone to prove why you're right. Why is that? Why can't they just disagree with you? And, all right, fine, do it your way. Like, why can't you be like that? And it's because your sense of self is so fragile if you're not high enough on the ladder that any single thing that anybody says that challenges what you think, they're actually challenging you as a person. And now this person that I want to respect and love me, they don't think I'm good enough to know the answer here. So I'm going to make sure that they understand why I came here. And that's how we start fighting. And then that's how all the other grievances come out. Because, we're still angry that they're not doing as much as we are. That they don't love us the same way. And we don't even see love correctly. I mean, people talk about love languages. My wife's love language is action. My love language is touch. And I used to actually complain when she would cook me a meal and bring it and set it in front of me. I would literally complain about that. I'd push it away and be like, I don't want this meal. You don't get it, And I'd be upset and disgruntled. She'd be confused. I just spent all this hour and a half cooking you this meal, right? And I was confused. I was like, all you had to do was come up and just touch my shoulder. And then I'd know I'm loved. And I try explaining it. But I never stopped to think about her position. What does action mean? Why is this woman cooking me this meal that takes an hour and a half? Could it be because she came from a rickety household, a shaky situation where maybe love to her was when she got a nice home-cooked meal? When she was seen as worth it to feed in that way? Could that be why this is her expression of love? And that's why she's telling me she loves me. She cooks this meal because I love you. You see what I'm saying? And when I started thinking about that, my heart melts. Now all of a sudden I feel the love. She didn't touch me on the shoulder. This woman gave me what her definition of love was. Not my definition, her definition, because it's all she knows how to give. So option one, I can continue to blast her because she's not doing it exactly the right way, exactly the way that I wanted her to do it. Or I could be like, holy fuck. This woman cooks me a nice meal every day. Every single day. How lucky am I? This person really loves me. I mean, they really do. I couldn't see that side of it. I just couldn't see that side. And here I am making her feel bad because she's not doing something exactly my way when she just did something amazing for me. And when I realize how and why and all of that, changes everything. Changes your whole perception of the situation. Sweet Nightmare says, my boyfriend dumped me after 3 years of living together. Now 3 months later, he wants me back. Help. Does your boyfriend have BPD, Sweet Nightmare? If you're here, if you can comment. I will talk and say that the BPD individual has a push-pull mechanic. We will push away the things that love us the most. We want them to prove to us that the love is real. We want to feel it in the way that we are pursuing, that we want to see. And if it isn't done that way, then we must not be loved, right? And one of the things that we do is we will run from the things that are good. And we have a self-sabotage mechanism. A feature of BPD is self-sabotage, okay? So in that self-sabotaging mechanism, the number one thing that hurts the most is the relationship. In my experience, all BPD people who leave like that usually come back. That's the truth. And I was the same way. I would go, periods of time, usually days, sometimes weeks, once in a while a month or longer, without talking to even my ex-wife, for example. And I would sit there and think about why it was happening, why she wasn't reaching out. If she cared about me, she'd try harder. If she cares about me, she'll still be there. And when they do this, usually they still feel attached to the relationship. So they're still thinking you're going to be loyal to them. The relationship isn't over in those kinds of emotionally charged environments, generally speaking. Blocking is a very primitive action. I always want to know what somebody's going to have to say to me. It doesn't matter if they're my enemy or my ex. I don't block anyone. And I don't block people. That's not true. There are cases when I think blocking is acceptable. If you're being threatened, blocking is acceptable. You know what I mean? Really, that's kind of all. I mean, that's kind of the only case where I think blocking is reasonable. Because even if they're my enemy, I want to know what they're going to say. I want to know what it is that's on their mind. I want any information, and I don't want to close communication channels. That is a communication in itself, is what that is. When they blocked you because all the other words didn't get the point across. So this is the new way of getting the point across. I think that they will come back. That is my opinion. And I know that it sucks waiting. If you love them and you want them to come back, then maybe wait a little bit and see. You can email me as well. Click on my profile, click on the email button, and send me an email. Tell me your story. Tell me what's happening, and I'll try to give you more specific advice that might be better curated for your personal situation. It's very hard just with one sentence, on a TikTok live to give you solid personal advice. I'm sure you can understand that part. But speaking from the general surface level, we don't really want to go. If we have BPD, it's the last thing we want to do usually. And it's interesting how we will create an environment where our partners and everybody else is scared of us leaving, right? That's an interesting thing. Can you start putting today's topic on the screen to follow and one day for just open questions? I have limited characters. I've tried that before, and I have limited characters. There is something I'm playing with where I might be able to get it up there anyway. A lot of people in lives do some creative stuff. I'm looking into that in some spare time. If I can figure that out, then yes, I'll put the topic up each day. Friday is predominantly for questions. However, people need help, so I don't mind derailing some as long as it's constructive, because we all just need everything that I'm saying. And if one person has a question about this and it's slightly off topic, they need to know today. And then everybody else listening might be like, yeah, that was good to know. So I'll do it. And I usually try to segue it back into the topic. Today's topic's rather broad. It's just BPD attitude. It's kind of how we're thinking, what we think about things, and how that thinking is skewed from the social norm. So almost anything fits into that topic coincidentally. You know what I mean? Because BPD kind of shakes up all of our life. It doesn't just focus on one element normally. And sometimes I get people who are telling me how BPD is impacting their life, and it's like they want me to think it's only really in my relationship. Everything else is fine. But the truth is, you only see it in your relationship. You know what I'm saying? You only see it in your relationship. It's everywhere. And as you start improving the really big hot spots, you'll notice it in other places too, to a minor degree. So it infects your whole way of thinking. You know what I mean? Travis, good to see you, buddy. I'm really happy to see you here today. If you have BPD, Kevin's programs was the only thing that has given me relief. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I take great pride in putting my heart into everything I do. I see people get better all the time in this program. It will change your life if you take it seriously. Travis is a good friend. He was a client, as you could see here, but he's a good friend now. And I often do become friends with my clients. It's very difficult not to. But especially the people who really want to improve, because those people, let's be honest, BPD people are the best friends you could ever have. I mean, they really are. They are the best people I have ever met. We just have these kind of little idiosyncrasies that make us intolerable long term. And if you get over those hurdles, then it is possible to lead a life that's actually satisfying, that's actually decent. Not everything has to be okay all the time, guys. I wish I knew that too. I wish I knew that not everything had to be okay all the fucking time. And I wanted it to be. So at any sign or hint that even the slightest thing wasn't correct or how I saw it, I'd go off the rails. I'd lose my shit trying to correct it. And I eventually ruin everything for whatever it was that I was focusing on. I'm focusing on the relationship, everything's good, and then she said something just slightly wrong, and I translated, and it doesn't come across right. Now I'm overly sensitive and trying to fix that, looking for other things, and before you know it, I'm ruining the relationship now. When it was basically 99% fine, other than this one small thing, right? But I have such an exposed heart before remission that all it took was one small thing. My heart was so exposed that I would feel even the slightest breeze and I would start panicking, So we got to get past that kind of mentality and understand that it's okay if things aren't 100% perfect all the time. Kale, good morning to you. I've been struggling so bad for weeks. I was diagnosed this year after a neuropsycho evaluation. I've had many of those and not got diagnosed. And then I pursued a diagnosis for a long time. Everybody thinks that it's a death sentence, getting diagnosed with this. It sounds so bad. They start telling you all the symptoms and the recovery rate is so low, and the rate of us who end it all is so high, and the dissatisfaction and the constant misery. And it's one thing to be trying to get help, right? To say, I need help, or to end up in a situation where you're talking to a mental health professional. like the one that you described, and you think that when they tell you what's wrong with you, that you will be better. And then you learn that it's this, and they specifically say there's no cure. Oh, shit, dude. I was already desperate and, like, hopeless and at the bottom of the barrel here in my life. And now you're telling me that I'm also screwed for life, and it's a life sentence, and that there's no way out, and have fun. I had one doctor tell me, have fun having unstable relationships the rest of your life, and literally pat me on the butt while he left the room. And I'm thinking to myself, what just happened? And that wasn't even a diagnosis. That was him just kind of hinting that this is what he thought it might be, and he wanted nothing to do with it, you know? And then, by the way, take these pills. Here, you can take them with you right when you leave the office. Sample pack, right? Sample pack. Because he knows he's not going to see me again for 6 months. Easier to lock my brain up in a jail cell than to be liable or have to really do some work to help me. And there's nobody who could do that work. Even the ones that were willing to do it, they didn't know how to do it. So I was alone the whole fucking time. I had to do this with no one. I had to do this with no person who understood what I was going through. And that's why I do what I do now. Because that makes a difference. Having the camaraderie and the support of somebody who knows changes it. You really can get better in 2 months. Nobody's ever told you that. They've told you the opposite. It's impossible. It's not impossible. It's not. You've just been told it's impossible. Just like that millions and billions of people who are told that you can't run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then what happens? That one dude runs it in under 4 minutes. Now everybody's running it in under 4 minutes. Because now we know it's possible. Hope is a really powerful thing. And if you don't have it, then it's very hard to change your circumstances. But I'm here to tell you that if I can get better, anybody can get better, okay? Jenny says, I have a friend with BPD, just sent me a long, shocking, and hurtful text and then blocked me. Well, easier to block you and blame you than to admit that maybe she could have done something differently. That is harder to admit because as easy as that is to say, she could have done something differently. No big deal, right? She doesn't want to accept any responsibility for that. And because we have a skewed perspective of what responsibility is. We think responsibility means I have to take blame, I have to be at fault. Blame, fault, guilt, unproductive. Unproductive. Responsibility, accountability, productive. Now things can change. But we don't know that they're two separate things. We think that if we say, damn it, that one time I loaned her $20, she never paid me back, whatever it may be. Sometimes friends don't look at things that way. We have different core values. Maybe to you, the $20 wasn't a big deal. I'll hit you next time you need $20, To her, she saved the day and expects it returned. Maybe that wasn't communicated. She could have communicated that. There's probably a million different ways that she could behave, of which would be better. But she didn't have that opportunity. And because she's run out of words, maybe this is even an explosion. Maybe she's run out of coping mechanisms, coping tactics. Blocking you is the communication that she is pursuing, okay? That said, I want you guys to understand that you can't control or manipulate other people into giving you happiness. You just can't. And I know that you know that's true because if you really think about it, you've been trying and it hasn't worked. If this person would just say this one different way, if this person would just do this one different way, if this would just happen this way, that way, whatever it may be, then I'd be happy. And why can't they just do that? It's the right thing to do. Can't they see that? Well, maybe it is the right thing to do, and maybe they can't see it. Maybe they can see it, and it's the right thing to do, and they don't want to. The point is they are a variable in your math equation of which you cannot control at all. You can influence it, but you just can't control it. And when you try, things get worse. It's kind of like struggling in quicksand. They say don't struggle, don't move, right? gotta float up and kind of roll out of it. You know what I mean? Nicole said, how did you get to remission? It's a good question. I was trying very hard for many years to get to remission. Remission is defined as less than 5 of the 9 symptoms. My definition is full remission, is what I call it. No symptoms, no episodes, no splits, because it is possible. There's a difference between the two. I had a full-blown case of this. I was experiencing every single symptom to a maximum degree. There is literally nothing I haven't done. I have a story for every story you have. And I felt hopeless. I found my current wife, Carolyn, and I was still full-blown borderline. She stuck by my side. About 3 months into the relationship, I had another catastrophic meltdown, like many I'd already had and many that I've had my whole life. And I remember thinking the next day when I woke up, I'm like, dude, if you don't stop this, she is going to leave you. You are going to lose this person. And I don't know what it was, because I've had that thought many times before about other partners, but something about that moment of realizing that, seeing the whole pattern of my life and seeing how it's impacting her was enough to give me the motivation to fix this. And I got on board with that for the wrong reason, because you have to be on board to fix yourself for yourself. And I know that scares you, because, well, that means I'm alone then. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You can't give, I can't give Carolyn a good life unless I keep myself together. I can't help the world unless I help myself first. And that was all backwards to me, because having the hero mentality that we have, I want to save everybody else to feel good about myself, but that's the problem. And I can do a much better job at saving everybody else when I save myself first. And I wish I understood that. You have to have awareness. You have to admit you have the condition, and you have to admit how it is impacting your life. Awareness is number 1. 2, motivation. You have to have motivation. If you don't, you won't have the perseverance to see it through. You just won't. Okay? Number 3, will to change. You have to decide that even though these things are uncomfortable and scary, I am going to change. Then you need some skills and perspective changes, and you need to learn to self-validate. I am panicking. I have BPD and it scares me. I'm going to lash out at my family due to an event. Okay, well, identifying that you're going to lash out is a good first step. Now, the next thing I would challenge you to think about is all the other times you have lashed out. I want you to honestly ask yourself if it's ever gotten you what you truly want. It works to some extent, or you wouldn't be doing it. You don't do things that don't benefit you. But how is it benefiting you? It's kind of like doing, if you fall into a bad addiction, right? You're doing it because you're benefiting from it, right? Well, that's why you're doing this too. Are you unnoticed? Are you unheard? Are you unimportant? Do you feel not good enough? Are you comparing yourself to other people at the event? Are you worried about judgment? Are you worried about criticism? You have to actually dig deeper and figure out the reason that you're feeling the way you do. And that is the answer in jumping to the next step, which is saying, well, I could just sit with the pain. I could just sit with this stuff. I could roll my eyes and do nothing, because anytime I've done anything, it has always led me to a place I don't want to be. And now that's why I feel upset, embarrassed, and scared and all this stuff. You could do differently, but you first have to admit that how you're doing it isn't working. User 665210594643 says, I love the username. How do you know it's time to end a relationship with someone who has BPD? It's not getting better. Well, them wanting to get better, I think, and their intention is probably the first thing I would look at. Do they want to improve? How's their awareness? Do they admit that they have BPD? Do they admit what BPD is doing to their life, to the relationship, to you? And there's a lot of questions I have. How long have you been together? Do you have kids? What are the episodes like? What are the splits like? What degree of BPD is this person suffering? To what severity? And that would help me determine how far along they are in terms of getting better. Because even before you know you have BPD, you're still on the ladder, even though you don't know, right? So that said, please do send me an email. Click on my profile, click the email button, tell me your story, give me some of these details. If you don't know what to say, I'll ask you questions. Just say hi. I'll know what to say to you. You know what I mean? But I don't want you to go feeling alone, because I will provide you guidance. So send me an email and I'll do that. I'm about a day behind on my emails right now. I plan to catch those up when we get off the live. So I should be able to respond to people today. And that is always the goal, to get back to you as soon as possible. I remember what it was like living with this, and I also remember how hard it was finding help, and then I remember how hard it was to reach out to that help, and I also remember how hard it was to be honest. I remember all that stuff. This is one place you can always be honest without any judgment. And you'll know that I'm always going to tell you what I believe is the right thing, you know? And I think we all need that in the world. We all need one place we can go where we can speak honestly and not be judged. I can't even get that out of therapy. I can't tell them everything on my mind. That'd be impossible. I can't tell them everything on my mind. If I did, they'd run for the hills. There'd be consequences. I'd get locked up, right? Hospitalized, whatever it may be. So it's tough. It's tough, but I'm not a mandated reporter. I went the coaching route, even though I'm well qualified to go the counseling route, because I didn't want to be a mandated reporter. Jenny said, sent you an email yesterday. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. I'm looking forward to talking to you and reading your email, Jenny. I should be getting to it within a couple hours here. So stay tuned and let me know what you think. I'll give you a thorough response. If you have questions from there, don't feel shy about it, okay? Samantha says, I have BPD and I feel like I push people away because of anxiety, which makes everything worse. It does. We don't want to be alone. That's not our goal usually. If we end up wanting to be alone, it's because we've realized that interacting with the outside world isn't working. And we found ways to cope in isolation. That is a delineation of BPD. Isolating to avoid judgment, criticism, changes, the truth. It's much easier to just block somebody or cut them out of your life, even if they're one of the most closest people you've ever been close to. That's how fragile we are. So those of you with BPD partners who are worried about getting left, everything is possible, but you can influence things. You can become a better support system. That's something else I help with. I have an entire program called the BPD Partner Program. It's my support program. It's really for anybody who is a loved one of a BPD person. Parents buy it, all sorts of stuff, right? It's meant to teach you how to better communicate and better interact with your BPD person. And if they're not on board with getting better, then it's meant to gear them towards getting better, right? If they're already on board, then many couples will do the programs together. The BPD person will do the remission program. The other individual will do the partner support program. They're designed to where they can be done in sync week by week with directives that match up, and also designed in a way where we can use it as an awareness tool in bringing them on board. Okay? It can be done a lot of different ways. So don't be shy. Tell me your story. And of course, I will give you whatever pointers I can that I think will immediately help you. I don't want anybody to have to suffer like I did. And the funny part about BPD is you kind of make the rest of your family and loved ones and partners and friends suffer with you. I didn't want them to suffer. I don't want you to suffer. No matter what position you're in, you don't have to suffer. You don't have to live this way. I mean, you just don't. And at some point, you're going to have to say, I'm choosing to live this way because now I know there's another way to live. So I could choose that way, but nah, it's more comfortable to do things the way I'm doing them. Is it really, though? I mean, is it really more comfortable living the way that you are? God, I didn't feel like I was living at all until I was in remission, to be honest with you. When I look back in time, I was living for every other person and every other thing but myself. I did not treat myself like somebody that I loved or somebody that I cared for. So why would I expect anybody else to? You know? And as I started changing my mentality and I started getting focused on building the best me that I could build, I started getting more love and care and loyalty and attention than I could have ever needed. And the funny part is I no longer needed it. And the answer was so weird. It was like I had to live for other people, which is what I was doing, but I was doing it wrong. There's a difference between our giving before remission, which is very high usually, and after remission, which remains high usually. I give just as much as I gave before remission. But now I have no resentment. Now I don't hate myself. Now I don't feel unloved or unwanted or like I don't belong or don't have a purpose. I don't feel empty. I don't feel apathetic. I don't feel nihilistic. I don't wake up and say, what's the point in getting out of bed? I don't have that anymore. And it's because I changed the way that I do things. I was doing all this stuff for people before because I wanted them to tell me how great I was so I'd feel good. So I'd feel good. I didn't even do it for them. I was, I thought I was, but I wasn't. Now when I give, I give. I really give. I give with no expectation of return. And it is so relieving living that way. It's so relieving. If I'm going to do, and it also gives you clarity, because now I think twice about the stuff that I do, and I put the time and energy into reciprocal relationships. If I'm giving and somebody's not reciprocating, I'm like, okay, and I lower the amount that I put into that relationship. I don't try harder to win over their love because then I'd be good enough. I already know I'm good enough. They're not an appreciative person. And I'm not angry about it because I didn't do it for appreciation. But I do have respect and dignity. You see what I mean? So I'm not going to let myself get used, which we often did let ourselves get used before remission. That's part of the problem too, okay? So that said, we are hitting the end of our live at 8 p.m. here. I want to leave you on a positive note. I know that it's hard to find the positive notes. I know that it's very difficult to listen to the positive side in your mind. And that's because you have that negative part that's always talking. Who is that asshole? Who is that person? You don't have to do this right now. There's no point. You deserve sitting around, and you're very welcome, Travis. Thanks for showing up this morning, buddy. I always get a lot of joy when a friend shows up, I like this. I like being here. I like that you're here. I like that too. And even though we're all looking through a phone, there's some type of energy here. Thanks, Amit. I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for always moderating and doing such a good job and making sure everybody's seen. I really appreciate that. You're doing great, and everybody loves that. I know they love you. Amit's a really good guy. He is the kind of friend that we want, that we strive for. And the kind of friends that you want are also in this chat. You know what I mean? The type of people that you have been seeking are all sitting right here, right? So you're not alone. You're not alone. And even though we're looking through screens, there's this weird energy in this live. I feel it anyway. And it's empowering. And it's exciting. And it's different than how I was living. And it's a reason to wake up. Because waking up just to your problems by yourself, that's torture. And there's another way. You don't have to be that way. You don't have to live alone, and you don't have to, suffer carrying your problems by yourself, and you don't have to think only one way, and you don't have to do things for other people's approval. You don't have to. You are choosing to. The good news is, this means that you could choose something else. So do that. Do that, because what you've been doing has never worked. I know you think it's the only way, but it's not the only way, and you know that deep down because you see other people doing it other ways. Try their way out. That's how I did it. When I had no one and I didn't know what to do and there was nobody guiding me, I looked at the neurotypical person and I said, how's Billy handling this? He's going through the same thing. How's he doing so well? I said, might as well try it. I'm just going to try not caring about this. I'm going to try to not worry about that. I'm going to try to enjoy this moment instead of letting myself live in a place where I'm miserable, either in the future or in the past. That said, guys, it's an honor being here every morning and talking to you, and I'm honored that you show up to listen. So good for you and good for me and good for all of us. Have a good day and be decent to yourself, something that might seem like a foreign concept, okay? It's time to start loving ourselves. I'll see you tomorrow, 7 a.m. US EST. Thanks for tuning in.